I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not good with cameras. I never was. My daughter set this up for me. The little stand, the light, and then she left the room because I told her I needed to do this part alone. My name is Harold. Harold Eugene Marsh. I'm 77 years old, and there's something I've been carrying for a long time now that I don't think I can carry much further. So, there's a house on Clementine Street, about 4 miles from where I live now. Pale yellow, white shutters. The oak tree in the front yard has gotten so large now that it covers most of the porch. I remember when it was small enough that you could wrap both hands around the trunk. I drive past it sometimes, not always on purpose, but not always by accident either. I never stop. I don't know what stopping would do. I just slow down a little, look at the window on the left side, the one that used to be the kitchen, and then I keep going. That house was mine once, mine and Ruth's. We bought it in 1974. Ruth had found it in the listings, and she called me at work. I was at the hardware distribution company then, just a floor manager, and she said, "Harold, I found it. I think I found it." And the way she said it, I can still hear the way she said it. We didn't have much. We scraped together what we had, and we signed the papers on a Thursday in October. And that night we sat on the floor of the empty living room with a bottle of wine we couldn't really afford, and Ruth put her head on my shoulder, and neither of us said anything for a long time. That's the part that stays with me, the quiet of it, how full it was. We lived there for 19 years. Our daughter Claire was raised in that house. She learned to walk holding on to that kitchen counter. She had her 8th birthday in the backyard. I coached her through geometry homework at the dining room table more nights than I can count. But somewhere in those 19 years, I couldn't tell you exactly when, I stopped being present in that house even when I was inside it. I was there, but I wasn't there. I worked long hours because I told myself that's what a man does. I came home tired, and I sat in front of the television, and I told myself I'd be more available on the weekend. And then the weekend would come, and there'd be something at the garage, or a neighbor needing help with something, and I'd tell myself, next weekend, next month, when things settle down. Things didn't settle down. Things just continued. Ruth used to leave little notes on the kitchen counter, not dramatic ones, just small things. Picked up your dry cleaning, soup's in the fridge, sleep well. I used to glance at them and move on. I don't know when she stopped leaving them. I didn't notice when it happened. That's what I mean. I didn't notice. One evening, Claire must have been 16 or so. I came home and the house was quiet in a different way than usual. Not peaceful quiet, the other kind. Ruth was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold, and she looked up at me when I walked in, and she didn't smile the way she used to. I asked if everything was all right. She said, "Fine, Harold." And I said, "Okay," and I went to hang up my coat. I've thought about that moment more times than I can count. What would have happened if I'd pulled out the chair and sat down across from her? If I'd put my hand over hers? If I'd said, "No, tell me, actually tell me." But I hung up my coat. We separated in 1993. It wasn't loud. That's something people don't expect to hear. There was no big fight, no dramatic night. It was just a long, slow acknowledgement that we'd been living beside each other for years, instead of with each other. She was kind about it. Ruth was always kinder than I deserved. She moved to be closer to her sister in Oregon. Claire stayed through the end of high school and then went to college and built her life, and she's good now. She's good. She has her own family. But I know there are things she carries too from those years, from watching two people slowly disappear from each other. I sold the house in 1994. I remarried in 2001. Her name was Diane. She was a good woman, steady and patient and good. We had 11 years together before she passed. Heart. Very sudden. I don't want to talk about losing Diane right now. That's a different grief, and it's still too close even after all this time. What I want to say is that even with Diane, even knowing what I knew by then, knowing what I'd lost with Ruth, I still sometimes chose the television over the conversation, still sometimes said I'm tired, when what I meant was I don't know how to open this part of myself. Old habits, old walls. You build them when you're young, and you don't always notice how permanent they become. I drive past that house on Clementine Street, and I don't feel sorry for myself. I want to be clear about that. I made choices. I have to live in them. But I think about Ruth sitting at that table with the cold cup of tea. I think about all the notes on the counter I barely read. I think about the quiet in that living room the night we signed the papers, how full it was, and how I spent years slowly emptying it without understanding what I was doing. She's in Oregon still, as far as I know. We haven't spoken in many years. Claire mentions her sometimes. She's well, I think. I hope she's well. I'm 77. My knees aren't what they were. I sleep in a house that's very quiet now, and mostly I've made peace with that quiet. Mostly. But some mornings I wake up early, and the light comes in at a certain angle, and for just a second I think I can hear someone moving around in the kitchen, and then I remember, and the house settles, and I get up slowly, and I make my coffee, and I stand at the window for a while. I don't know what I'm looking for when I stand there. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just need a moment before the day begins. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you. I mean that simply. I'm not asking you to do anything with what I've said. I just needed to say it somewhere. If any part of this felt familiar to you, the quiet, the missing, the slow way we sometimes lose things we meant to keep, then maybe just sit with that for a while. That's all. That's all I've got.